Hi everyone, my name is Moj Taylor. I'm an actor, comedian, and I also teach scuba diving. And I've been a push presenter for 11 years. Now, I didn't have a gap year, but my sister did. And I knew quite a few people who had them later in life because you can have a gap year from 18. I've entitled my little bit of this before I hand over to Aaron, Mind the Gap, because you need to be mindful of this gap. And most people think of a gap year as a pause button. You just pause it and then it's kind of see where you'll end up, find yourself. How can you find yourself? Literally, how can you find yourself? Unless there's a mini version of you playing a massive game of global hide and seek and trying to find you. How can you lift up a rock in Machu Picchu and go, I've come all the way to South America to find myself. And then you lift up this rock and there's a little version of you going, hello, I found myself. No. I don't think you find yourself. I think you build yourself in life. I think you can put yourself in situations where you gather opportunities, you gather contacts, you fuel your curiosity for something, and you upskill yourself. And luck is made. So some things you might think about finding yourself and this magical thing fell in your lap. I think it would be because you put yourself in the right situations to help luck come around. So what I want to do is think about gap years properly. My parents had two different perceptions of gap years. All right, my dad's a bit more kind of working class. He's a carpenter, joiner. He's very practically skilled. He's never really earned much money, and he has a factory which he helps run with my granddad. He has always thought a gap year can be local. He said to my sister, why do you need to go off to South America? Why don't you work at the business? Because it's about the transferable skills and the contacts you make. That's what you're really focusing on for your CV for an ever-changing world where we're going to have to be really adaptable. So do you want to really narrow it down and go with what my mum thought a gap year was, which was going off to maybe Africa, supporting a local community project, maybe working on some kind of ecological thing on the coast, or maybe going to South America and traveling around, or something like interrailing around Europe. Two different perceptions, aren't they? How are you going to fill that gap? Think of it like a pothole in the road. How are you going to fill it? The idea is, ironically, you should know how you want a gap year to end before you start it. Different class structures, different perceptions of gap years. Depends how much money the family has, depends how much money you have. Have you got some inheritance that you want to spend? Have you saved up really hard with part-time jobs in the last kind of 3 or 4 years? But if you've got this pot of money, wherever it comes from, you can have this idea that, yeah, it's then spent. You go off, it's going to boost your CV. You're basically paying to upskill these stories and these experiences on your CV. But stories about going off to South America, they're useless unless they prove genuinely what you've learned. Now, what do you want to learn on a gap year? Think about it. You want to learn soft skills, really, unless you know that you want to help on a project in the middle of the Amazon because you want to go and study zoology. I know a girl who did that as a gap year. Great. That is a good investment because it's very, very linked to what you then want to do. That is useful. But is it useful if you're going to help a local community abroad, but you have to pay a ton of money to a gap year organization to go and do it? And then really, you wonder sometimes if when you've gone there, they might have preferred the money themselves to help the local economy in an autonomous way, handle the project themselves, be self-led, upskill themselves as a community. And I'm not saying that they don't want you there, but I'm saying you need to make sure you think about all of these things. Who is benefiting who on these gap years? Stories are only useful if they prove your experiences and your skills, usually your soft skills, like being able to handle difficult situations, being able to be creative, being able to work in a team, being able to problem solve, being able to critically think, a bit of cultural and social capital and an awareness of why it's helped you work out your ethics and values. And will you have any money left over at the end of it? And will it really look good on your CV just to say you worked for them? Or is it more about the soft skills? Now, soft skills and the contacts you make, will those contacts be really, really useful far away after you come back? Or is it better to upskill yourself and get contacts in your local or your more regional area or just in England? Because they might be the ones who you really might literally bump into again who can help you in the future. And that's why I say you need to fill this gap. You need to think about those words, FILL. First one, F, stands for financial. So financial freedom versus reliance. How free can you be with your finances during that time? Can you use that first quarter of your gap year, the first 3 months or the first 4 months? So I like to think of it in quarters or in threes, in a trimester. So the first 4 months of a gap year, are you just earning money? And there's nothing wrong with that. Any job you do, whether you like it or not, part-time in your local area, is going to teach you good soft skills, good people skills, client relations skills, having to be punctual, having to think about how a company operates. So that's what you do. You might think about getting a couple of part-time jobs or keeping some of them. In that first 4 months, you're just becoming a bit more financially flexible with some freedom. Then you think about financial reliance. So is it that actually you're not relying on your parents yet? They're not really expecting you to pay too many bills in that first year after you kind of finish year 13, because often it won't be. You might give them a bit of money each week, but your parents might say, no, use this year to actually become a bit more financially freedom, build up that kitty. So that first 4 months, you might save some up. What do you do with that money? Is it for after your gap year and you're going to use it then? Or is it for the middle 4 months, which might be where you go off and volunteer if you've checked it out properly and it's really what you want to do and it's helping both parties? Or you might use that money more locally. What on? Futurelearn.com, really good online courses. Go and see your local colleges and universities. So local courses, short courses that you can do in person, evening classes, master classes that are run by independent businesses or maybe local creatives or craftspeople in the area. And then also locally, that middle 4 months, think about your LEP, your local enterprise partnership. Your local economy is growing. What projects are being invested in? So you can know what companies and what things might be good to start volunteering for or approaching for jobs. Once you decide you can maybe build some money at home, think about that reliance. Where might you need to rely on in the future, even if you have a kitty saved up? So that's bursaries, scholarships, grants, literally asking people for money locally. You can do this. You can write to some very respected rich barons and lords and things, and you can say, this is me professionally, this is what I want to do, and I would love any money you can donate to my cause. I know that a girl who did this and it worked. This lord just gave us some money back in a check. So you never know. Be proactive, be inquisitive. So think about the hours you have in life. We're not alive for that long. And my auntie and my cousin are both nurses, and they've seen some horrible stuff. They've been in PPE, for the last kind of 16 months. And they've said, value this time you have in life. And a lot of you might have been affected by these things, or know people have been affected by that C word I won't mention because we're tired of it now, aren't we? But think about the hours of your life. Becoming inquisitive can be made easy for you by hashtags on Instagram. Follow local companies, follow local industries. When you hashtag them, it means your stories on your Instagram and your social media will flood with those things instead of the things that you don't really want to see. So think about local subscriptions to online magazines, local blogs by people in your area, maybe linked to your industry. So have a think. Volunteering, follow any kind of volunteering and kind of Facebook groups you can. So you're becoming inquisitive. The next one is locality, L. So FIL, we're filling the gap now. Locality means networking. It means who is in your area, who can genuinely help you out. And can you get somewhere really easily? By a bus pass, by a young person's rail card, which takes about 30% off your travel, and you make it back in 1 or 2 trips. So an annual pass, and making sure you know where your student discounts are in your area, so you can get to places easily. You can afford if you need to volunteer. The fourth one, which is the second L, is love. You've got to love something. You've got to be curious about something. Do you need that year to find out what you're truly curious about? But learn to love yourself. Learn about how important it is to keep a good diet, to do exercise, to make sure that you find your ethics, your values, your type of crowd in life, why community matters to you, what type of people you want to help. Your community could be far away. It could be in another country. It could be here, and it could be really local, or it could be 1 train away in Birmingham or in Cornwall. So think about FILL, financial, inquisitive, locality, and love. Because the best thing you can do by the end of it is have some really good proof of your skill sets. It's a system called STAR. Situation, what was the situation you did? What did you do in your gap year? Task, what did you literally have to do to achieve your objectives? And then A is action. How did that go? Did it go all right? What did you do? What were the challenges faced? And then R is result or response. What did it lead to after that? And by the end of your gap year, by the end of that third trimester, that final 4 months, you want to know what that STAR is. You want to know how you've built that situation, task, action, response, so you can put them onto your CV. And by the beginning of a gap year, you should really know where you want to end up at the end. So you should still have some rough milestones. Is it that you want to start a course at a local college, university, an apprenticeship, a higher apprenticeship or something, or you just want to bag a local job, or you're not even sure? Because if you're not sure where you want to end up at the end of a gap year, it's not a wasted year. Your bridge by the end of it is learning that fourth L, to love yourself a bit more. Know what you want from life, your self-worth, which is so important in life. It's how everything builds, where your confidence comes from and your resilience. I'm going to tell you two final stories. My sister had a gap year after, because she's a year younger than me. I rushed into university and she took a gap year, and she stayed local, got a part-time job, went to an art college and did some kind of foundational courses, so she knew where she wanted to end up at the end of that year. And she kept her 2 part-time jobs, and she did a bit of volunteering as well. And then I've got a colleague called Ben. Now, Ben is on our YouTube channel as well, so he's worth checking out. But Ben failed his first year of college because he's dyslexic and he was too afraid to tell anyone. And part of loving yourself, remember, work out how you like to learn best, the people and the environments that work for you. And you might need that gap year to help that flourish, to find out what type of a learner you are. But all his friends went off. He didn't know what to do. He went to Australia to play cricket because he was always good at cricket and sport. So he got an opportunity to have a kind of scholarship program in Australia, very far away from family. Technology, not so much of an issue now, though, with FaceTime, if you do one of those gap years far away. But he said that gap year was not about going to Australia. It's about building his skill sets, having that situation, task, action, response that really, really fuel him knowing himself better. And he did make contacts because it was sport. He went over with a touring kind of team. He came back and those contacts were here. They weren't just in Australia, but then he did have contacts in Australia. And now he works quite high up for strategic management and people management, trying to get more diversity into the industry in Skanska, in a big construction firm. So it's not just about actors like what I do. It's about other types of people take gap years, but it's about how you use that gap year wisely. He knew he wanted to work with people and he wasn't good with reading things. That was why his gap year was worthwhile. And when he came back, all the transferable skills he learned from sport massively helped him when he applied to Skanska. And then he worked his way up, and Skanska even paid for him to get a degree in his spare time. He just had to stay a couple of hours extra, a couple of days a week at the office, and they paid for him to get his degree with no tuition fees about 5 years after he started working for them. So have a think about those things. I also know someone recently who went on to Dragon's Den. It's not been released yet because it's the latest series they've just filmed, and he got a couple of offers. I won't tell you who from, for his product, but he told me tips for entrepreneurialism, because you might decide to become an entrepreneur over your gap year. That might be the bridge to the end, that you have a product and you've got local people or outside funding from wider afield to support you to grow that product and the development of it. But he said, make sure you have a real need that society needs. Know your market and know your numbers and know how you're going to build the capital to be able to invest it into what you want to do. So that's your fill. And I will see you at some point, hopefully in person, in the near future. But stay safe, stay well, and fill your gap year with useful stuff. Bye-bye.